Welcome to the Vandal Factory extra special election 2024 episode.
That's right, folks. We are in the middle of the election campaign to see who will be our glorious overlords on the 5th of July. And I've never been less engaged in a flipping general election in my life.
Yeah, I've never been less engaged either. In fact, I'm just coming out of a personal lockdown where I've been so intensely working that I had to come off my WhatsApp groups, come off social media. I've not done anything social where I've just been working towards like various deadlines and things. And so I've not engaged with any news, but I'm assuming that everyone's talking about all the important issues that we care about. All the politicians are sort of going on the high road, talking about policy and what impacts directly on people. Is that right, Henry? Is that how it's been going?
I'd say slightly more dystopian.
Okay.
I'd say this is definitely the general election which is discussing how to deal with foreigners the most.
Oh my God.
So all the conversations are borders, boats, and I've not seen very little on the arts. So that's why we decided to put together this activist arts manifesto. So here on the Vandal Factory podcast, if you're new to us, we talk about arts, we talk about activism. We should probably introduce ourselves as well for new listeners. I'm Henry Raby. I'm a poet.
My name is Natalie Quatermass, and I'm a community organiser and theatre maker, and I'm doing a PhD in performance and place. So that's why I've been busy thinking about actually how to make a difference in my community rather than paying attention to the news. But it was amazing that it was Henry's idea, because I had to lock down on Vandal Factory as well. Henry's idea to go, what would happen if we emailed everyone in all these interesting people that are in our email inbox and ask them to contribute to an arts and activist manifesto. Henry, do you want to tell people what the brief was?
Yeah, so this is what I asked people. So if you can hear a scratchy noise, it's Natalie's dog sat between us having a little scratch.
This is Obi Wobi Woo, who would like to contribute to the Arts Manifesto by... he looks shy. Looks like it's shy. He would like to campaign for more biscuits. That's his manifesto pledge.
Yeah. So...
what's the brief?
The brief. Okay. What are your angry, hopeful beliefs about the impact of arts on communities? What needs urgently sharing? What are pieces of legislation or change in the law that would help the arts flourish? How can we change the structure, the funding, and the way we manage culture?
That's a significant brief. And I'm really genuinely honoured and touched at the calibre of artists that have responded to us. I feel really lucky that we can send out an invite and get these awesome people responding to us. So who are we going to hear from today?
So, in no particular order, you're going to hear from Dermot Daley, Luke Skilbeck, Jarmouse, Boff Whalley, Lisa Holdsworth, Daniel York Loh, Peyvand Sardegian, Daneka Etchells, Richard Burgon, and Seth Mowshowitz. And Seth plays in a band called Fold, and we're going to end with their latest track, Dark Matters, which features Mr. G. Oh boy, what a big lineup of cool people.
Oh, amazing. I can't wait. I haven't listened to it yet, so I can't wait to hear all these ideas.
Can you imagine a house party with all these people?
Can you imagine a government of all these people?
Oh my God, yes.
They'd sort out everything.
Yeah. If you enjoy what you hear, we are the Vandal Factory podcast, and you can subscribe, you can follow us on social media, and you can share on social media. Tell your friends, pop it in your WhatsApp groups, get it on X, Facebook if you're over 40.
Just tell us that we know that people are listening, but we're desperate for people to let us know what it is that you're enjoying, what it is that you're not enjoying. It's having this feedback is really, really useful because we love doing it and we want to do it more. So thank you so much for listening. Please let us know.
Right. So
I can't wait. We should put this when this is together. We should put this to the new government and be like, by the way, 4,000 people have listened to this and agree with all these ideas. So please put them into action right now.
I'm going to go down to number 10 and I'm going to play this on my speaker outside over and over until it gets recognition.
Oh, well, hope and anger to everyone. See you on the other side.
Hello, my name is Dermot Daley and I am an actor, director and lecturer. To help the arts flourish, I propose an understanding of privilege and gatekeeping. If we are truly to live up to the Arts Council's Let's Create agenda, we must free creatives to create. We must remove overt gatekeeping by looking at who it is that makes the decisions. Nothing changes unless those who make the decisions change. We need to see more empowerment for artists to imagine the world differently and not simply to shoehorn new ideas into old structures. Audiences will only know what they are offered, and if what they are offered is all that they know, then nothing new can truly happen. Every theatre in the country to that end could hold a scratch night at least twice a year with defined outcomes for each participant. Ask the companies, ask the artists what they want, ask them what they need, and then work from there. Every creative team in any discipline should include people new to the role that they are employed in and or be new to the industry. If we only work with those that we know, the circle will become smaller. If you're creating a creative team, then make sure at least one person in that team is someone that you don't know. Observation in rehearsal rooms. Often, the first time many theatre artists are in a room is when they have the pressure to create something, therefore they aren't able to look around and fully take on board how that room is being run, how the work is being made. Creating space for paid observation is really easy and it encourages more people to be part of the art. It should be mandatory for schools to introduce a new work by an author who isn't white, male, dead and European every single year in English and drama lessons. This will give impetus to interrogate where the knowledge that we think we have actually comes from. Funding applications should not involve thousands of words. In fact, every funding application should have the option to write in a way that suits the applicant. Not all writing is with pen and paper. Every application should come with actionable feedback. Some companies and schemes do already do this, but it shouldn't be an exception. It needs to be the rule. We can only get better if we know what it is that we need to do to be better. Communities must be included from the outset of any project that will engage them. The same goes for access. The under-26 theatre ticket scheme should be re-energised, reintroduced. Touring theatre outside of London should be supported by a financial levy on the big London theatres and their big ticket prices. We need to remember that culture exists outside of the M25. Theatres outside London should be compelled to have a percentage of their on and off stage workforce coming from their local area. If we do that, we keep artists in work, we keep them in touch, we keep them in place. We stop this exodus down to London. Not that London is a bad place, obviously, but whenever there are productions and theatres that are looking for people, this mass exodus down to London is damaging to local economies. Board membership should be paid. It should be paid so that we can diversify the people who sit on them. The money could come from central government and not the arts budget. If we want to change, we need to change, and that change can happen.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm a television writer. And my passionate hope for the new government is that they will end low and no pay work within the creative industries. For too long it's gone on. We need some legislation. We need action to deter late payments to freelancers. We need the tax and benefit reform to ensure the system is fit for purpose for a freelance workforce, because earnings fluctuate and we're often paid in lump sums, and that's not reflected by the tax system at the moment. I'd like to see greater parity of earnings for people who write children's content. I think that's important because there are young minds and we're bringing them into the world of arts and creativity. And I'd like an end to internships and schemes that are unpaid, because I think they're limited limit access for working class people and people from underrepresented communities getting into the arts and creative industries. So fingers crossed that the new government, whoever that might be, do something like that. We've so much to win, but also so much to lose. We're still recovering post-COVID, and it makes such economic sense to bolster both the arts and creative industries in this country.
Hi, I'm Jarmouse. I'm a performer of songs and poems and stories. The change I would like to see in how the arts is funded is a move away from funding projects and a move towards funding people. And funding projects is all well and good, and it can work to some degree. I think it does have its place, but a good funding application does not necessarily make a good piece of art, and conversely, a good piece of art or something which is worthwhile for an artist or a group of artists to pursue, get involved in, get interested in, does not necessarily make a good or a successful grant application. I think we should be funding less projects and funding more people. There is precedent for this. In Ireland at the moment, the government is currently running a 3-year pilot where it is funding 2,000 artists to survive so that they can make whatever art they want to make. They don't have to deliver on a certain brief. They don't have to pitch what their project is. They are just funded to be. They have space and time to fail. They've got space and time to change direction. And they can work however they want to work and make the art that is closest to them. And I feel that that's the direction we should be moving with our arts funding. It's never going to happen though, but, I can hope.
My name's York Loh. I'm a writer, an actor, a filmmaker, a musician, and I'm chair of the Equity, Race Equality Committee. I'm currently have a play running at Soho Theatre called The Tao of Unrepresentative British Chinese Experience, running till July the 13th. I just needed to plug that. Okay, what I would change about the way the arts is structured in this country at the moment. What's happened in the recent past, more and more so, is we have been, I think, censored. We're sort of being intimidated into self-censoring. And I think our arts is less vibrant as a result, and it particularly affects artists of colour, stroke global majority artists, whatever way you want to call it, because our very existences are political, I would argue. And there needs to be an emphasis, I think, on empowering those voices to speak out, actually creating a conducive and encouraging environment for artists to make work about the issues of the day, about war, about genocide, about mistreatment, about political matters. We're being told all the time we shouldn't be political these days, and a lot of people in our industry are kind of buying into that. I would adopt the White Kite Pledge. I would enshrine that in funding agreements. This is the White Kite Pledge, written by activists who are much cleverer than me, White Kite. 1, we will adopt a zero-tolerance approach to political intimidation. Lobbyists will not gag our organisation or censor artists that they happen to disagree with. 2, we will pause when we receive allegations and accusations against artists, speakers and academics, and do due diligence, consulting with all parties before we cancel anyone. 3, we will not use safety as a smokescreen or cover for what is effectively censorship. 4, we will not be complicit in the silencing and erasure of Palestinian culture. Instead, we will actively platform Palestinian and pro-Palestinian artists whose voices need to be heard. I was part of... we took a motion to the Equity Conference recently about the fact that we put in a Freedom of Information request to the Arts Council to request minutes of the meetings the Arts Council had with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport back in February time, around the time the Arts Council put out the guidelines about reputational harm. And what that Freedom of Information request revealed is that those reputational harm guidelines, which the Arts Council quickly retracted under a barrage of criticism, were put in place directly because of a meeting with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. This is government interference in our Arts Council. It's unacceptable, and that can never, ever happen again. There needs to be a full and urgent inquiry. I would also, to take that even further, I would go very hard on blacklisting in our industry. This goes on, it's rife, it's kind of regarded as part and parcel of it. You know, if you upset the wrong people, you won't get work. This is unacceptable, and it wouldn't be accepted in any other industry, but it's kind of seen as just par for the course in the arts. I would definitely tackle that. And I think also there needs to be a proper, robust complaints procedure put in, because about bullying, about intimidation, about harassment, because at the moment, what you have is gatekeepers in a room. Any one of them can say to another one, don't commission that writer, or don't cast that actor because, you know, they're abusive. And everyone will go, oh, no, we'll cross that actor off the list, or that writer. Whereas if you actually try and put in a proper formal complaint to these people about bullying and harassment you've been the victim of, you will be processed and prevaricated and procrastinated and gaslit into the middle of next year. So this is a fundamentally unequal imbalance of power, which has gone unchecked for far too long. On a final note, actors, I would do away with self-tapes unless it's absolutely necessary. In these days of Zoom, you don't need to do them. And what they've done is basically become an industry norm ever since lockdown. I understood when it was there because sometimes actors couldn't make castings. I understood that, but now it's become an industry norm. And it puts all the work onto actors, and I'm convinced half of them don't get watched a lot of the time. And you know, actors will sometimes argue with me and say, oh, I prefer it, I can do it in my own time. Well, that's the thing, you are doing it in your own time. That's unpaid labour that you're doing. And I can bet you bottom dollar, a lot of the time it's not even getting watched. So that's what I would do away with. What else? I think there should be initiatives for experienced writers, directors, theatre makers as well, rather than initiatives for newcomers all the time, because we're allowed to be newcomers, but we're not allowed to be experienced, those of us from marginalised backgrounds. I hope that's of use, and I don't know who to vote for at this election, because the Labour Party aren't great, but I would hope we would get a better arts policy from whoever gets in power, but I'm not holding my breath. Thank you. My name's Daniel York Loh. My play, The Darvan Representative of British Chinese Experience, is running at Soho Theatre until July the 13th. Thank you very much.
I'm Peyvand Sardegian, a performer and performance maker. Funding cuts, closures of community spaces, the erosion of arts education is a systematic dismantling of our cultural infrastructure. And this ain't happened overnight. It's been chipped away over my lifetime. We need to stop taking steps backwards, especially when social mobility is already in decline. I'm livid that the arts are treated like a frivolous luxury, something that you flash to signal status. It's a staple, a necessity. Art feeds us, it nourishes our souls, fuels our imaginations, and connects us to each other and the world around us. I'm furious because the reality on the ground doesn't change, despite all the big talk from organisations about inclusion and diversity. Reports consistently show that people from lower socio-economic backgrounds, disabled people, people from ethnic minorities are significantly less to engage with the arts. And this isn't about personal taste. It's about systemic barriers, financial, social, cultural, that lock out entire communities. And the workforce itself is just as skewed. It's dominated by a privileged few, while artists from marginalised backgrounds are left scraping by. Occasionally there's a tokenistic gesture of inclusion, but the door remains firmly shut behind them. If there's room for you, there's room for me. This isn't just unfair, it's a catastrophic loss of talent and potential. And make no mistake, those elite schools aren't getting rid of their state-of-the-art theatre facilities anytime soon, and this isn't just about career pathways. Whether or not someone becomes a professional artist, taking part and enjoying art is just as valuable. Being told that creative play isn't as essential as maths, alongside the other pressures of life, is a way to switch off imaginations, to keep the lower echelons in their place by stifling the thoughts of other possibilities. But advancement comes from innovation, and that involves imagination. But I am hopeful, because even though it's getting harder to express, I think the wandering, daydreaming minds in our society will always find a way out. We need the arts to heal, to vent, to process, to challenge, and to relax. So here's a couple of thoughts I have. Stop the snobbery. Forget those lines between high and low art, between professional and community. Get off your high horse. Fund the grassroots. Redirect money from the bloated institutions to the scrappy artists working in their bedrooms and community centres. They're the ones who are truly pushing boundaries. Education, not elitism. Give every child a chance to discover their inner artist. I have art classes that aren't just about mimicking, but are about actual self-expression and critical thinking and radical imagination. Celebrate the misfits, the weirdos, the outsiders, the ones that don't quite fit. You might learn something. Get uncomfortable. Be prepared to listen and have those difficult conversations. Stop being so defensive. It's not a competition of who has had it the hardest, nor do you have to defend having had a relatively nice life at times. Identity isn't fixed, and we all operate within different contexts. Drop the hot takes. You don't need to know everything. Stop acting on panic. That's when all your genuine well-meaningness becomes performative. Everyone could do with taking a minute and reflecting. Look beyond our immediate circles. There's a wealth of knowledge and perspectives from other fields that have had or are having these conversations, from science to social work and community organising. We can all learn from each other. We are not exceptional. Stop the "especially as artists" rhetoric. Research shows that most cultural workers are in a bubble. For crying out loud, get some other mates. Stop using everything as a networking opportunity. Do some things that have nothing to do with your work. It doesn't make you any less dedicated. And it might make you feel a bit better. Remember, access to and participation in culture is a human right. So get messy, make some noise, and make time to play for the sake of it.
Hello, I'm Boff. I'm a musician and a writer, and as a contribution to the Activist Arts Manifesto, I'd like to play a little bit of a song. But first I want to just say something about the idea of activist art. I think that one of the first, obviously, of course, we have to change the way that art is governed and funded and all that sort of thing. But I think also at a kind of grassroots level, I think we have to really fight against the idea that the arts is being rebranded as the creative industries, and that the only reason that art gets a seat at any kind of power table is because it provides some kind of economic benefit to the country. I think we have to get away from that. We've got to fight that. And I'm reading this book at the moment, Culture is Not an Industry. It's really interesting. Reclaiming art and culture for the common good. Basically trying to kind of express how important art is for everybody, for individuals, for communities, in everyday life, in all sorts of ways. And that we've stopped seeing it as something that you just go and pay for, and it gives you some kind of tangible financial return. I want to read you from here as a lovely little definition that Brian Eno came up with as a definition of the creative arts. And part of it is, he says, definition of creative arts: symphonies, perfume, sports cars, graffiti, needlepoint, monuments, tattoos, slang, Ming vases, doodles, poodles, apple strudels, still life, second life, bed knobs and boob jobs. And I love all that. I think if we can start seeing culture as just the things that we see around us and that we listen to and that we look at, and it's all there to give us enjoyment and give us a kind of fulfilling life, and it's there to encourage community and conversation and debate. This is a song, a bit of a song called On eBay. They're building a tower out of wrappers and cans. Sad, so sad. Now we talk in a language that we all understand. Sad, so sad. Tongue-tied and starry-eyed. Sad, so sad. It's the ancient history of old school ties. Sad, so sad. There's stuff dressed up as truth, and then there's stuff dressed up as lies. And it all ends up as stuff that you can buy on eBay. Babylon, back to Babylon on eBay. Babylon, back to Babylon on eBay. Babylon, back to Babylon.
Henry Raby, punk poet, gig promoter, collector of audio like their Pokemon cards. Thank you so much, Boff, for bringing a bit of Chumbawamba into this episode. This feels a really good time to mention that one of my favourite albums is Nevermind the Ballots, which is Chumbawamba's second album, which is an anarchist concept album about elections and voting. And I always listen to it around the time when there's an election bubbling and brewing away in the background of my life. And I was gonna quote some of the lines from it because it's this beautiful combination of silly and serious and funny, and can something be furious and blunt and spiky at the same time? Especially the last song, which is called Here's the Rest of Your Life. But I realised if I wanted to quote something, I'd just literally read the whole song out. So instead, I urge you to go away and listen to Nevermind the Ballots, and I'm gonna read a poem that I've written for this episode. It's new, it's work in progress, but hey, it's got to get thrown out into the world sooner or later. So this is called the Manifesto of Hope and the Manifesto of Anger. The Manifesto of Hope will be written in thick red pen, and nothing will be scribbled out. There will be arrows roding through the manifesto like missions on a map, sentences squeezing for space, overloading the pages. And what will the Manifesto of Hope be written on? The backs of envelopes, the space between scribbled passcodes and the margins of to-do lists. It'll be written on the backs of paintings with spray cans, words built in clay and wood and steel and projected. Written on flipchart paper, mind mapping the next project, the defunct draft of a work-in-progress script, the notebook trying to flesh out the next funding bid. The Manifesto of Hope will have a bedrock of footnotes at the base for every time you needed a just one more thing addition. Chapters will be jumbled up, skipping orders like treasonous troops. The bullet points will drop off the page and get lost under the sofa. And where will we write this Manifesto of Hope? It will be written in the light of wildfires, under serious sunshine beside bonfires on muggy trains to visit old friends. It will be written backstage with one ear listening for the cue line. It will be written in the corner of a recording studio. It will be written behind the box office when you're skiving off shift. It will be written on the bus to the poetry gig during the breaks between bands, in the back of your friend's car after the comedy show. And what will it say? Well, to be honest, 100 unique styles of handwriting make it hard to read this desperate scrawl. Now, the Manifesto of Anger I will write after a 12-hour binge of BBC News. I will write the Manifesto of Anger after giving up on a call to the GP. I will write it after swimming in a sewage-infused sea. I'll write it after a billionaire realise, hey, you're just like me. After saying goodbye to someone not ready to die, after being forced to moderate a Facebook group called Why Everything is Woke. I will write it after a work-in-progress showcase where Ricky Gervais attempts to tell me jokes. After spell-checking a set of J.K. Rowling tweets. I will write the Manifesto of Anger after attending a royal wedding once a day for a whole fucking week. After the last sting by a bee, after shaking hands with 100 scabs, after a debate on trans rights with the Reform UK lads, after being stopped in the middle of a nice walk by some tweedy sod who says, actually this land is ours, one Sir Starmer sits me down and lectures me for hours and hours and hours and hours. during another pandemic, during another crash, during another grab for cash, whilst being cut and downsized and repurposed and then meagerly levelled up, while social media is bathing in blood and another crisis asking over and over again, who decided this? What are the demands of the Manifesto of Anger? To fuck those fucking wankers. Right, okay, that's me done. Over to Natalie.
So I'm in the bath and I'm thinking about the Vandal Factory General Election special and what my contribution to this National Arts Manifesto might be. And I'm just thinking about my own experience being an artist and what would fundamentally change that experience. And really it all comes down to just wanting to be an artist and do what I think I've worked very hard at learning how to do, and I think I'm quite skilled and I've had a lot of training in doing what I do, and not needing to deal with any bullshit. So essentially, I thought, well, my policy should be about letting artists be artists, and there being a sort of pay the artists to do the work. And I think that would fundamentally change society if people were just, good eggs were allowed to be good eggs without worrying about money. So I thought, well, actually, I'm just talking about universal basic income. And okay, so maybe that's my policy. It's just universal basic income, but there'll have to be a transitional phase, right? That couldn't just happen overnight. And I'm supposed to keep it specific to the arts. So I'm like, okay, universal basic income for artists, which is essentially what people in the 70s and 80s had. Like all of the people that are running our institutions now that came up through the community arts and alternative comedy scene, they were all just on the dole, and it allowed amazing things to happen for the creative industries in this country. So I thought, okay, well, all I want is you'd have to go through some kind of process where you're essentially invoicing the government. You just send your bill every month, be like, this is how much my rent was, this is how much my bills were, maybe some basic food. But I reckon if you want a bottle of wine and a curry at the weekend, you're gonna have to do some work for that. But pretty much you've got your house above your head, and you can cover the rent every month, right? That's guaranteed. But I thought, it's not realistic. So I thought, well, maybe we could roll it out through a sort of good egg policy. Okay, if you're a good egg, if you're just doing good stuff for your community, for your city, your family, whatever, then this is what you get. You get a kind of basic, thanks for being a good egg, continued being a good egg, here's some money, right? And in order, how do you decide who's going to be a good egg? So I thought, right, so you could have a council that democratically elected by everyone of super good eggs, and they have to go and visit and assess other good eggs and decide whether they're a good egg or not. So this council, I think automatically you'd need to have people, anyone who's ever turned down a MBE or what's it called, the Lord and Lady of whatever, the Sirenship, you're automatically on the list, I think. Which is a shame because it sort of cancels out Sir David Attenborough and Sir Ian McKellen, but never mind. So that there's going to be good eggs. I would say I would nominate Kathy Burke gets to be on the council. I'd put her name down, or I'd put Chris Packham. and put on my list of like people to nominate as being super good eggs. And if like 500,000 people decide that they're good eggs, they get to be on the council, and their job is to go meet people who are doing other good eggery. I think there's probably some kind of like ceremony that involves eggs, probably eggs that have come from like retired battery chickens that have been rescued and are now just living their best life and don't mind if you have an egg. So it's like genuinely a good egg, and then you get given this good egg, and it's a symbol of you're a good egg, which now means that you get your like basics covered, and you get to just continue being a good egg, but without worrying about the rent. And I think that would be my policy. So let me know how we can make this happen. Thanks.
Hey, Henry and Nat. My name is Luke. I'm long-term listener, first-time caller. Pronouns they, he. I'm the artistic director of Milk Presents, based in Manchester. And one of the things that I think that needs to change specifically around the Arts Council is that the Arts Council lets create guidance that guides how all of the funding decisions are made. On that guidance, LGBTQIA plus people are not considered within their diversity aims. And so what that means is, even though it is a protected characteristic, it's just not in any of the guidance. So then when they're scoring and marking, it's not something that they are thinking about at all. And so then, because it's all sort of done on points and scoring, and it's a numbers game really, in how they mark, you then haven't actually got any queer or trans focused MPOs. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am on that, and no MPOs that are specifically thinking and only thinking about LGBTQI people. And what that means is that those communities are not seen or served really in a specific or thoughtful way, because they're not seen or served in the guidance that is deciding what gets funding. And that was shocking to me to start with, when I was like, why is it not in there when it is it is protected? And then I was like, it's not actually surprising at all, because when you think about the way that the Arts Council is now very sort of controlled in a much heavier way. It used to be a light touch way from the government, whereas now they're much more involved. And so if you think about the government at the minute, their stance and policy around trans people specifically, trans rights, outside of the arts, people are still waiting up to 7 years for a first appointment at a gender identity clinic. It's very clear where their priorities lie in that respect. Conversion therapy is still legal. That doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. And so in that context, or against that backdrop, when you think of the Arts Council as being an extension of the government now, which I think I would guess it is really, that all makes perfect sense, doesn't it really? Which is a little bit depressing, but it is, I think, where we're at. And that's what I would change. All right, take care. Good luck with the podcast. Can't wait to listen. Bye.
Hello, I am Daneka Etchells. I am an actor, writer, and all-round gobshite. At first, I think when I graduated, I thought I'd have this amazingly varied career, but I don't. And I work in theatre, and that's my medium, and I like that. But there's something about theatre that is so joyful, is that kind of like live shared experience, and seeing the whites of the eyes of the audience and them seeing you, and having like that mutual symbiosis together is the thing that still brings me joy. I think we need to pay people more money. And I think it's a lie when people say that there isn't money. There is the money. They just don't want to spend it on that. We need to pay people money and care about retaining talent, as well as creating and nurturing new talent. We need to retain it. But I think if there was one thing I could ask the Arts Council to change, it would be to equally fund producing work in the regional theatre scene to the same level and money as as touring work. I think that it doesn't have a lasting impact on cultural capital. It doesn't have a lasting impact on communities and make people feel like it's something that they can do if it's only something they can watch. And I wish that, you know, I'm from a very far flung corner of the UK. I'm from rural Cumbria, and there's only one theatre up here, and I'm thankful I'm working here right now. What a joy. But there isn't anything else. And the only work you get is a touring panto or a tribute act, or, you know, even if you live in somewhere like Newcastle, you get the RSC touring there, but there's not very much that's made there in the same way, to the same level. We need to stop trying to think of this is the thing that will fix it. And we need to work on a people by people basis. I think as a disabled actor, I feel like people are trying to solve accessibility at the moment with these blanket things. And I think some of them are really helpful, but I don't know if all of them are. And it kind of creates like monoliths and like a lack of autonomy and individualism, and everybody needs a different thing. And I think if we just took, if I don't know, if the culture shifted to stop thinking about how do we solve it? How do we solve? I think what it is we need to stop solving people and solving bodies. And I think our industry is really thinking at the moment about inequity and about marginalisation. But in that, you become in the pursuit of trying to resolve that, in the pursuit of trying to get rid of that, you become only that. And I think we need to just come through that, keep going through that and push through that, and get to the point where we can just see people for people and realise that everybody needs different things, that all these different things exist, that we are all these things all at once. I think we need more like apprenticeships, and we need more easier points of contact and easier points of entry for people to join the arts. The thing I'm really thinking about at the moment is we need, when the people come and they are new and they've had that first breakthrough job, how do you keep them? Because you bring all these people in from marginalised backgrounds, especially from working class, low social capital, low socioeconomic backgrounds. We bring them in as this amazing thing, and they'll do one big, massive, amazing job. And then what's next for them? Because you've shown them this world, you've showed them this place, and they were good enough for you to have a little tick box on your thing to say that you did that. But how do you keep them? Because if you don't pay people enough money, if you don't realise that this is a job, it's not, we need to get rid of this hobbyist behaviour. It is a job, and we need to look, you know, we need to work more with our unions and treat it more like a career and less of a hobby. What I hope for the future is that it's easier to get into it, but it's also easier to stay. Yeah, I see a lot of people leave, and I'm seeing a lot of people leave at the moment, or people not even get the chance to get started and leaving because it's not sustainable for them to keep trying, or the money's not good enough that they can't support their family, or they've got care responsibilities, or they've got access needs that aren't being met, or they're going into rooms and they're the only majority person in the room and they're feeling uncomfortable, and it's happening again and again and again. And it's like, how do we create a culture that allows these people to stay, that feels like they don't have to turn away from the thing that they love and the thing they've worked for so many years to be able to stay? And I think that's what I hope the landscape is in the future. I hope that this industry starts seeing accessibility as a creative tool. And I think funders should ask more of that, because if you can't access the work, then what hope in hell do you have of getting those people into those rooms if they can't even access the work that they're trying to make? And it is a creative tool. Accessibility is a creative tool, and it should be seen as such. And that's a hope I have as well. That's it. Done.
My name's Richard Burgon, and I'm a massive fan of music, metal in particular. I've attempted to be a musician. I play the piano, the guitar, not as well as I play the piano, and the bass as well. I love going to live gigs, love going to the theatre, love being part of the Leeds music scene. For me, and I'm somebody that's been a Member of Parliament since 2015, and before that I was a trade union lawyer in Leeds, my main interest outside work has always been going to gigs with my friends, seeing local live bands. I used to put on gigs in the past. It seems to me quite often that the kind of corporatization of music has squeezed out a lot of the smaller music venues. And of course, some people say, oh, smaller music venues are really important because they're the training grounds for the big bands of the future. To me, that's not the most important argument. Lots of the bands I like, you won't be surprised to know, since I like punk, metal and hardcore, lots of the bands I like never become stadium fillers or arena fillers. And I believe in music for music's sake. I believe in arts for art's sake. And so small venues are important in of themselves, because music and the live music scene is important in of itself. It doesn't matter whether bands become a commercial success in inverted commas or not. What matters is that local music thrives and that music scenes thrive. Clearly, small venues need support from whoever the government is. Small venues have been closing at eye-watering rates. And whilst I enjoy going to gigs at the O2 Academy, whether it be in Leeds or in any other city, they are the kind of equivalent of the kind of coffee chain shops, aren't they, really? And, you know, when I think of Leeds, I think of, you know, venues like Boom, you know, formerly known as Temple of Boom, you know, the Brudenell Social Club, Damaged Goods, other venues like that, where people can just put on their own gigs. And I do believe in the DIY element of the music scene. But in terms of the legislation that needs passing, whether or not it's through legislation, the reality is that these small venues need support from the government, especially when these companies have been ripping us all off. These energy companies have been also ripping off you know, music venues too. And that's one of the reasons why music venues have been struggling, is because the bills have been going through the roof. And also I do think we need to look at planning law in relation to music venues, because, you know, we've had campaigns in other parts of the country where music venues are replaced by luxury flats, for example. And I think the starting point has to be that the value of music venues to the community needs to be recognised by governments. It can't just be seen through a commercial lens. You know, we need to see that these small, unique venues, once they're gone, they're gone. But also we need to ensure that anybody that wants to learn an instrument can do so. And I think that's something we really need to push, the availability of musical instruments in schools, so that, you know, youngsters who can't afford to buy a guitar or whatever can have access to a guitar through school. I think that's really important, and through, you know, different community centres as well. One thing, it's a real shame. One of my favourite bands, a New York hardcore band called the Cro-Mags, they're playing in Yorkshire, in Huddersfield at the parish, but they're playing on General Election night. So that counts me out, unfortunately. I went to see them play in Nottingham the other day. It's fantastic, but sadly I can't go because I've got other priorities that day, knocking on doors. But I'm sure I'll be, whatever the outcome of the election, I'm sure I'll be at a gig soon, enjoying myself and letting my hair down.
Hey, I'm Seth Mowshowitz, and I make and perform and teach music. I also make videos, design stuff, and I love long walks on the beach and puppies. Actually, I'm more of a cat person. Okay, bear with me now. This is a long one. I know I'm always hogging airtime on here. I apologize. I am currently in the process of applying for funding from the local council here in Leeds to offer a music production workshop, primarily to the kids in my neighborhood who couldn't otherwise access such things. I was finally driven to this by the murder of a 15-year-old who was stabbed to death near our primary school by a 14-year-old. This kid was from my neighborhood. He was known to me and my family. Before he died, he'd already been in the youth justice system for a few years. My partner looked after his case for a bit. I've lived in the UK since 2003. I have 2 children myself, aged 12 and 15. And one thing that has become abundantly clear to me is that in most communities, there is really fuck all for young people, pre-adults, let's say, to do. One of the biggest reasons for this is that since 2010, the youth services, including youth clubs and youth workers, have been cut by 69%. The pandemic made this even worse. This lack of support for youth hits the least privileged the hardest. The kid who got stabbed to death in my neighborhood had been badly let down by nearly all the important adults in his life. Rather than helping him find strategies to cope with the situation and build his resilience, he was kind of fast-tracked into the youth justice system. My partner worked in that system for 20 years, and she tells me that once you're in, it is very difficult to get out, so it's a lot like the prison system. Alongside not actually having shit to do, there is a nationwide mental health epidemic, with a particularly major impact on younger and more vulnerable people, and even more so young people with undiagnosed neurodivergence and accompanying unmet needs. So maybe this isn't so much about a change in the law, but rather, one, a concerted effort on the part of both national and local governments to provide a much better local youth offer with an emphasis on creative self-expression, and two, visibility, acknowledgement, and a strategy to tackle this mental health epidemic that includes teaching basic mental health skills and resilience in the national curriculum. Without this investment in the future of our young people, we will continue to see increased antisocial behavior, county lines recruitment, drug addiction, street violence, and homelessness, among other things. With it, we'd not only see an improvement in all of the above, but also, to tie this all neatly into the activist arts manifesto, we'd be seeding new generations with creative self-expression as a means of both managing mental health and developing viable skills to help the arts flourish. Surely that's a win-win.
Stumble into the unknown. This world has both a fork and a knife, and we're all fighting for rice, as steel pays the price for a place to call home. Come see the trauma reborn before me, as old battles cling on to newly baptized names. Ancient shadows pander to flickering candles, smashing each infant corner under the rapture of flame. Come sip from the cup of these useless ideas, these jobless doctrines just flogging a career. If you don't sanctify life in all of its torturous beauty, the peace that you proclaim will never be found here. Now come take a look in the mirror and see eye to eye on what we truly are. I'm all that you've got, and it might not seem a lot as we bulldoze the block to enlist future scars. You can't fight wars without becoming a warrior. It's never too late, so don't give up. Nobody knows who wraps up the red carpet. Nobody knows why the end game is corrupt. Nobody sees the blood stains in my writing. Nobody hears my ancestors scream. Nobody knows why we're always fighting. And nobody can bring your love back to me. If you live long enough, you learn to regret. Once upon a time is yesterday and some change. If they blaze the village of a child, then what do you expect? He'll replace the confusion with chaos, and the chaos with rage. So come walk with me. Let's hold this space and try to unpack time. Before we were born, the universe made poetry. Before I was born, this world destroyed mine. Nobody sees the blood stains in my writing. Nobody hears my ancestors scream. Nobody knows why we're always fighting. And nobody can bring your love back to me. Nobody sees the blood stains in my writing. Nobody hears my ancestors scream. Nobody knows why we're always fighting. And nobody can bring your love back to me. Nobody sees the blood stains in my writing. Nobody hears my ancestors scream. So come walk with me. Let's hold this space and try to unpack time. Before we were born, the universe made poetry. Before I was born, this world destroyed mine.
Thank you so much to Seth from Fold for such an articulate and deep and insightful and tragic answer. At the start, Seth, you go, I don't want to hog up too much time, and you say these amazing points in under 3 minutes. Yeah. It's incredible. No ramble, no waffle. Well, here's the one wobble and here's the waffle.
the womble and the waffle.
Yeah. So I was thinking a lot about what I do in my job in the arts sector, as well as just local engagement in my community. And there are so many community centres and church halls and community spaces in mosques and other just spaces that are hanging on by a shoestring or have been really let down threadbare by 14 years of austerity and neglect and cuts. And I was thinking, how do you activate them? And I use that word really specifically, like activate, and get them. Things are already happening, really important things. But how do you really make them hubs for communities?
Activate the buildings.
Yeah, activate the buildings. And so I was thinking, if there was 3 strands that, this is like, if I was culture minister, I'd go, this is the 3 commitments that every community will have. And that is arts, obviously, hooray, love it. Sports and sciences. Like, it could be about life skills of programming or coding, or even things like fixing cars or engineering, climate crisis, and things dealing with environmental issues. It can be a huge spectrum, and there can be intersection between these 3. I'm not saying that the kids who do science are in one room, the kids who do, and when I say kids, but it should also be for adults as well, happens in different spaces. Like, it needs to be a thriving, busy, free, accessible, community-led space. That's just my things I've been chewing over.
It sounds a lot like what you're describing is called project-based learning. And there's a huge amount of research that's like, again, the research on education always seems just so far away from what is being told to our schools to deliver. So there's a huge amount about project-based learning, where young people come together to do a thing, and usually that's really deeply connected to real life problems, and then your educational skills all intersect within that, and they're working together. It's problem solving, and this has come from, I won't be able to give you loads of references, but it comes from thinking about what does the next generation of the world need. Like, we don't actually need to know lots of facts and figures and be able to remember them, because we've all got computers in our pockets, and we all have access to a calculator at all times. What you need to be able to do is communicate, work in a team, problem solve. So yeah, whether it's okay, we're going to work out how to build an allotment, and with that comes joinery, with that comes about growing cycles of food, then it comes about cooking, and then you can learn the science behind the actual doing, you can have the engineering involved, then you have cooking as an art form, sharing food and storytelling. Like, this is all the stuff that I do, where the work that I'm doing and trying to get into schools is so difficult now. There's such a barrier to getting anything going on in the community into schools, whether that's primary schools or secondary schools. And there's reasons for that. It's because they're underfunded, they're under huge amounts of pressure, they're also still recovering from COVID. But schools need to be much more permeable and connected to what's going on in the community, so that we can do place-based learning, which is what I've just written an essay about. But place-based education, so that whatever's going on in that local community can also be a fundamental part of young people's lives. That could happen through schools, or it could happen through community centres. It's just a long way away from the sort of Etonian, highly curriculumized? Yeah, I put that in my essay, that word, the top-down kind of education that has been forced through over the last 14 years. So that's something I would like to see. And then suddenly your arts, your sports, your science is inherent and embedded in everything that you're doing. And a bit like Boff Whalley said in his thing, that culture becomes part of our lives. We recognise it and validate it as being everything that you see around you. And who you are in your local community becomes a really important part. If you're comfortable with who you are and where you come from, it's also really easy. It's easier not to be threatened by outsiders. Going on to what you were saying earlier about, like, this whole election's been about foreigners. So there's all kinds of reasons why this sort of place-based education, and one that centres problem solving, is so important. Anyway, we've gone off on a lovely, great big tangent. But what a chewy! These are the things that our fantastic speakers have instilled in us. These big conversations, and
we want you to join these big conversations.
Indeed,
we do a feature called the Freelance Feelings Factory feature.
Freelance Feeling Factory.
and you
etc.
start singing. So if you've got a contribution about being a freelancer in the arts and what's great about it, or what's not so great about it,
then come into the Freelance Feeling Factory. Ooh, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for checking out the Vandal Factory podcast.
See you again soon. Bye.
Bye.